Hey, sixth graders, how are you? We are going over chapter 10 today. Mrs. Ramsden here. It's been a long time since I've seen you. I'm glad that you're here with me. You know, I have to tell you, I really love the sixth grade curriculum because there are so many great Old Testament stories that aren't just stories, but about people's lives and like almost biographies about people. And we're going to learn about four of them today. Joshua, Deborah, Samson, Ruth. I mean, great stuff and really interesting. So let me get going because it's going to be a little bit a longer video than usual. So in the Old Testament, we have a book called the Book of Deuteronomy. And the theme of that book is that God's people must love God and obey him. So in Deuteronomy 6, that's chapter 6, sentences 4 through 5, it says, love God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all of your strength. And that pretty much sums up the whole book of Deuteronomy because that's what the basic and main theme is. Deuteronomy, the book of Deuteronomy, ends with Moses seeing the promised land, but dies before he gets there. He goes up to a mountaintop and he's able to see it. So in Joshua, the book of Joshua, I'm going to show you a little kind of cartoon kind of picture of what Joshua might have looked like. I think from this you can tell that he might have been what? Yeah, a soldier or in the army of some sort, right? So that is him. And you'll see why he has his hand like this, like he's yelling, as soon as I get to the story of Joshua. But anyway, so in the book of Joshua, we hear about the fall of Jericho and the conquering of Canaan. And I'm going to read that. That's actually, it's in your book on page 121. But I'm just going to take a moment to read it to you because it's a really good story. So get ready for a good story. Here we go. Pardon my glasses. Yeah, I'm getting old, kids. Okay, Joshua 6. 1 through 20. So that means it's the 6th chapter and it's the sentences 1 through 20. Let's start again. God told Joshua not to attack the city directly, but to march around it with his troops. So there was the city of Jericho and he said, don't go right in there and attack. Instead, I want you to walk around the entire city with your troops, just walking. And in those days, cities were often kind of like closed off with stone walls. So that's why they were able to see where the city started and ended, and they were able to walk in a circle around the city. Joshua had his troops do all that God commanded him. They carried the Ark of the Covenant before them. So who knows what the Ark of the Covenant is? Anybody? Can you think about it? Okay, so the Ark of the Covenant is a wooden box that holds the 10 Commandments. Now remember, the 10 Commandments were given to Moses on Mount Sinai and to the Israel people. And the Israel people carry it with them because they realize that it is, directly comes from God, and they put great importance on it. Now Joshua, as you can tell from his picture here, he was a military leader, but he followed God's plan and shows that God is with the Israelites in every part of their lives. Okay, so that's what he was pretty much known for. So let me continue reading. They carried the Ark of the Covenant before them. 7 priests using ram horns, isn't that a strange thing, as trumpets led the march. So let me show you what that might have looked like. Okay, so see these horns that they have? Those are the horns of a ram. And that is what they use to blow to alert people or to call people forward. So they used ram's horns as they circled the village of Jericho. So let me read that again. 7 priests using ram horns as trumpets led the march. Joshua and his troops did this for 6 whole days. They didn't go in attacking. They didn't throw, sticks and stones and start, hitting them with swords and trying to get into their space. They didn't. They stayed on the outside of the walls of Jericho, and they marched for 6 days. On the 7th day, they marched around the city 7 times. Then the priests blew their horns, and the Israelites shouted loud. So this is why you see Joshua like this, because he's giving the cue for everyone, for the Israelites to shout loudly. And the walls of Jericho, the walls of this town, Jericho, fell down just by that one act of obedience to doing what God had said. 7 days of walking around. You can see the priests with their horns, Joshua yelling, and all the people yelling, and you can see right here the walls are falling down from Jericho. The walls of Jericho fell down. Then Joshua and the Israelites took over the city of Jericho. The Israelites conquered this city because they followed the plan of God. Even though Joshua was a military leader, it was God who was the real hero in the capture of Jericho. The biblical writers use this story to show that the Israelites believed that God was with them in every part of their lives. So it's something that we can pull from that would be that, we are challenged to find where God is in every part of our life. Okay, so then we move on to another person from the Old Testament, and her name is either Deborah or Deborah. I like to say Deborah. And she was a judge. Now, this isn't the kind of judge that we have here in a court of law. It's a little bit different. This kind of judge is like they deal with disputes, but they also are, these judges in the Bible get messages from God, and then they tell the Israeli people what those messages are and try to have them follow God's way. So Israelite once again started to worship false gods, and then they lost possession of Canaan. So Jericho was in the kind of like the county of Canaan. So Deborah ordered Barak, a commander, to go to the Mount Tabor with his troops. Barak wasn't sure about this, but he did it anyway. And she said to him, God will give Israel a great victory if you do as he says. So go to the Mount of Tabor. And he did. So God delivered as promised, and it was with Deborah's faith the land was free again of any enemies. So there's a depiction here of what Deborah might look like, Deborah the judge. And you could see here she's kind of guiding the troops, which we don't normally see a woman having so much strength in the Bible, but here she is, a very strong woman, guiding the troops and telling them what to do and where to go and how to do it. Because of her faith in God and her trust in God, they were able to conquer and get their land back from Canaan. Now there's another one that you might have heard about. His name is Samson. You might have seen pictures of him looking kind of like this, a big burly man with a lot of hair, very, very muscular. Or you might see a picture maybe more familiar would be like this, with him pulling over the temple, knocking down the temple. You could see the width of this column, that he was so strong he was able to pull it down with his bare arms. So Samson was one of the most famous judges. From birth, he was kind of consecrated and given to God. And then once again, during Samson's time, the Israelites started turning away from God, and the Philistines ruled over the Israelites because of this. Samson was blessed by God with great strength, like not even human strength. And he was consecrated to God, which means he had to keep special vows, like no drinking wine or alcohol. He couldn't touch anyone or anything that had died. He wasn't able to cut his hair. All these vows are what kept Samson strong. So let me read to you the story of Samson. If you guys can get into the Bible about the story of Samson, my goodness, let me tell you, great story. Also, last fall, not this COVID fall, the one before it, the Living Waters Theater in Pennsylvania had the play Samson, and I went to see it, and it was really, really good. So let me put my glasses back on, and let me read to you a little bit about Samson. Samson married a Philistine woman, but the Philistines mistreated him and his wife. So a very personal struggle began between Samson and the Philistines. The Philistines went so far as to kill Samson's wife, and they killed her family too. Samson was enraged by this and took revenge. Now this is important. Listen here. He took revenge on the Philistines. They began to fear Samson's strength and wanted to capture him. So later on, a little bit later, Samson fell in love with another Philistine woman, Delilah. So sometimes you hear about the story of Samson and Delilah. Well, this is it. The Philistine leaders paid Delilah to find out the secret to Samson's great strength. At first, Samson lied. This made Delilah very angry, and afraid of losing her, Samson told Delilah that God gave him strength as long as he kept his vows. So while Samson was sleeping, Delilah had a man shave off Samson's hair. Then she called in the waiting Philistines, who blinded Samson. They then took Samson to prison, kept him in chains, and forced him to turn a great stone that grounded. Okay, I told you this was a long one, right? So now we are going to go to part 2 of this. So either go to the spreadsheet and see where the part 2 is, or write down in the comments. I'll give you the link for part 2. See you in a little bit.